Welcome, everybody, to Adapt or Perish, episode 55, Roald Dahl's The BFG. As always, before we get started, let's talk about our next episode. Christmas is right around the corner, and we figured that a classic would be in order. This holiday season, we're celebrating with a look at the classic tale of consumerism, Miracle on 34th Street. We watched the original 1947 movie, the 1955 TV adaptation, the 1973 full-length TV movie, and the 1994 theatrical adaptation. Do we have a sense of wonder and whimsy sufficient to survive it all? Find out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, December 17th. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adaptorperishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find the show notes from this and all other episodes at adaptorperishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapt or Perish, episode 55, The BFG. Welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw.
There's a baby sleeping. There's a baby here.
He's not sleeping.
I don't know how this is going to go.
Yes, this is our very first episode recorded with our third silent host, although he's not that silent. So if you hear any hiccups or little gurgles or frantic sobbing in the background, that's the baby. It's him.
So how long does it usually take us to record a 90-minute episode?
I don't know.
Not that we've ever done a 90-minute episode.
2.5 hours.
I wonder how long this one's going to take.
A couple days.
Maybe. Hey, so we're welcome back to us. For those of you listening at home, you've heard a couple of weeks of reruns, but now we're back with our first new episode since the birth of our child, Calvin.
We have this baby. He's in a bouncer. He's awake, which I don't love. I wish he would go to sleep so that we could record this episode. And also because we are really responsible adults and parents, definitely both drinking alcohol in the middle of the day.
Well, that's as may be, but that's fine. We got a show to do.
Yeah. So just for those of you who have been kind of following along the peek behind the curtain at home, we had this baby at the beginning of October, and it is now, as we're recording this, the end of October, and you will be hearing
it's November.
Oh, no, you're right.
It's fully November.
I don't know. I haven't left the house in 4 weeks. I don't know if you noticed. It's fully November, and you will be hearing this, I think, in December, November-ish, December-ish, sometime. Time has lost all meaning. I want to be very clear. The other thing, at one point, we thought, for those of you who care about us as people and, follow us on Instagram and stuff, we thought about doing, a special episode with, our birth story, but there really wasn't anything funny fun that happened. It was not fun.
It was kind of traumatic.
The whole process was traumatic and sucked.
Harrowing.
Yeah. Don't have a baby.
Jesus.
Unless you want to. If you want to, then you should. But I can't recommend the actual process of giving birth. It was not pleasant and sucked. So, there's my birth story right there. Not fun. Not super funny. Nothing funny really happened, except that one midwife that walked into our room at one point while I was sobbing and was clearly in the wrong room and was very confused about why there was a sobbing woman in the bed, and then just stood there staring at us for a while before she slowly backed away. It was like Grandpa Simpson walking in and then back out of the burlesque house, except she stopped and stared at us for a long time while we were in emotional turmoil.
It was too long. She was there too long.
And we never saw her again.
But do you want to get down to it?
Yeah.
I know we're a little out of practice right now. Do you want to do a show?
Do you mean the show, the show, or do you mean just talking about the baby?
No, the show.
Oh, do the show.
Who cares about the baby?
I mean, he's
no one cares about the baby.
He's fine. He's actually very cute right now. He's just looking at me.
I love him so much.
All right. Should we try to, let's do this. I don't know how this goes. I forgot. Let's do it.
Well, let's get started with what we're talking about today.
Okay.
So for today's episode, we are going to be talking about another Roald Dahl book. This is now number 3. because we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and we did Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, so this is number 3, and probably not the last one because we still have to do Matilda. Like, that's kind of the big one.
I know. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
So we're doing Roald Dahl's The BFG.
Yeah.
Which was published in 1982. The BFG. So this is the one about the little girl with the big big friendly giant.
Big friendly giant, BFG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. Well, you discovered something very interesting, which was that the genesis of this book actually got its start in a previous book by Roald Dahl called Danny, Champion of the World.
Which, honestly, I never read.
Oh, really?
I was pretty limited with my Roald Dahl when I was a kid. Like, I definitely read the BFG. That was my favorite. I think I read Fantastic Mr. Fox a little bit. I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. Like, I didn't read The Witches because too scary, which we've covered before.
We've covered that,
And
yeah.
I never read Danny, the Champion of the World. I never read Boy.
Boy was one of my favorites. Did you read Matilda? Matilda was like my favorite
No,
book.
I never read Matilda.
I mean, I don't know why, like, a book about a spunky little girl with glasses who liked to read and felt put upon by adults was a book that I personally would have related to. I have no idea. Like, that's just not me. But
I'm stumped.
yeah.
Fully stumped.
Fully stumped.
But what was it? So the BFG was my favorite one. How did you feel about the BFG when you were a kid?
You know what I feel about the BFG? I think the same way I feel about Mr. Rogers, and you love Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Rogers is great, and the BFG is also great, but it's like, I think it was like a little too gentle for me. It was just sort of, it's very, the book itself is very atmospheric. It's just a lot of kind of description of scenery and like.
And just description of giants like chowing down on children and people. You're right. It's very gentle.
That
just
part
like
too.
Mr. Rogers.
That part too. But I don't know. For some reason, it just never was my favorite. It didn't have a lot of action.
I disagree. I mean, that's okay. I was actually trying to think of why it was my favorite when I was a kid, because I never really thought that much about it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You don't spend like your childhood going like, what does it mean to be a child?
No, you don't.
Why do I like the things that I like?
I mean, you didn't?
No, I certainly didn't. But I was thinking about it now, and I was thinking about like what was it? What is it about this book in particular that made it my favorite Dahl? And I think it was kind of like two different things, and I kind of related to other things that I loved when I was a kid, like the fantasy. How many other Roald Dahl books were about like a normal kid having like a magical friend?
A magical friend?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue that that's what Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is about.
And I liked that one too.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like Charlie's friend.
No, I guess not.
Like he was so much more kind of. What's the word I'm looking for? Not like amoral.
Yeah, well, the amoral is
morally ambiguous.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
But like Charlie's best friend was Grandpa Joe.
Yeah.
But this one, it's like about a normal kid who has this like kind, decent, magical friend that basically has superpowers. Like the BFG is a superhero. Yeah. Essentially.
Yeah.
Like he's big and strong and can like travel around the world as fast as he wants to. And like I loved superheroes when I was a kid.
Okay.
And,
all right. I see that.
Like I look at other Roald Dahl books and none of them really do that for me.
Okay. I can totally see that.
I think that's why the BFG was my favorite.
That's fair enough.
Loved it.
That's fair enough.
I also loved how dark it was. Like
I mean, there was
like it's gruesome as hell.
There is a character who eats children who is a giant whose name is the Butcher Boy.
The Butcher Boy is my favorite.
The Butcher Boy totally sounds like he should be in a Decemberist song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's gruesome. Rereading it now, this is a thing that happened like reading the book and watching the... Okay, so... Speaking as a parent.
Oh, God.
Should that be a new segment?
I think this is going to be a new segment because there were multiple times that we turned to each other and we were like, oh, God, oh, no. That I don't think would have before the baby, popped out.
Like clutching our child closer to us as we're watching this stuff. But like people die a lot. And it feels, I mean, okay, so I
mean, children are eaten by giants, like little children.
And clearly, like, that's just not a thing that would upset anyone who isn't themselves a parent.
Right.
Like, how could it possibly upset anyone who doesn't have a child
Oh, God.
themselves?
Someday, when you have children, you will understand.
Oh, yeah. No, you'll understand. We're being completely ironic right now.
Oh, that should be the name of the segment. Someday you'll understand.
Someday you'll understand. Oh God, I thought speaking as a parent was good, but yeah, someday you'll understand. No, but was there anything from all this stuff that like jumped out to you as like, oh shit, I have a kid now. I'm watching things differently.
Yeah, again, like the character named the Butcher Boy. No, seriously, like I have had this. It's not even just like, oh, a child is in peril. It's really like any kind of violence or hurt, even if it's like one adult against another adult, I'm finding harder to watch because I literally think, oh my God, what if that were my child? Like, even if it's a man, like an adult man being hurt or injured. I actually just read the book, The Maze Runner, which I really hated for other reasons. But that had a lot of violence towards children in it. And I found it like very challenging to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, violence, I feel like, not that I ever like loved scenes of violence before, but I feel like this is going to be a big challenge for me as we move forward. We're only going to be able to like look at the gentlest possible like 19th century children's novels.
Yeah, because kids never die in those.
Yeah, like The Secret Garden. Well, I guess there is a kid that like almost dies in that. I'm not actually sure what we can possibly watch from now on. This is the end of the podcast. This is the last episode.
It's
Goodbye.
been really fun.
Goodbye,
it's been super
cruel
fun.
world. Weird.
No, I feel like
we're too good for this world.
it's funny because you've been talking about this since we came home with him, because we have watched a lot of TV and a lot of movies in the last month. I don't, like, in all seriousness, I haven't had this happen to me. Like, I've been watching some of the same stuff I always watched, and it's not really affecting me any differently now.
The first day we came home from the hospital, I was like, I can't watch anything that was made like in this century. We watched like a bunch of black and white old movies. We watched like Casablanca and To Be or Not to Be, like the old 1940s one.
I love how you're saying, like, we couldn't watch anything that was made in this century, so we watched Empire Records and 10 Things I Hate About You.
Well, you know what I mean. We couldn't watch anything that was like in color or
and
had any kind of
Lebowski.
tension.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
But getting back to the BFG.
Well, I feel like it's time. We should probably talk about what this is about.
Yes.
Do you want to do back of the book?
Let's do back of the book. So we actually have two different copies, and I'm going to read the summary from the more recently published version just because we liked it a little bit better. And here is what it says. The BFG is no ordinary bone-crunching giant. He is far too nice and jumbly. It's lucky for Sophie that he is. Had she been carried off in the middle of the night by the blood bottler, the flesh lump eater, the bone cruncher, or any of the other giants, including the butcher boy, rather than the BFG, she would have soon become breakfast. When Sophie hears that they are flush bunking off to England to swallump a few nice little chidlers, she decides she must stop them once and for all, and the BFG is going to help her. So it's a story about a little girl who meets a giant and becomes friends with him, and there's other giants that are scary, and she stops them from eating little children.
Yeah.
That's the plot of the book.
That's essentially the plot.
Yeah.
So getting back to like what our experiences were, because you did read this when you were a kid.
Oh, yeah.
What was like, were there any parts of the book that were like particularly nostalgic for you? Was there anything that like came rushing back as you were rereading it?
I definitely remembered the part where she like rides around in his ear.
Yeah.
Because I always remember thinking that was gross, and also like the imagery of him being able to like flatten his ear into a disc that she could then like sit upon. That I did remember pretty strongly. And I think I didn't really understand who the queen was because the queen is definitely a character in this book. So reading it again, it was like, oh no, the queen, like this is the queen of England, like the current queen.
That's one of the things I loved about it, that like, well, okay, so two things. One, yeah, she is the fucking current queen.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't matter that this was written in 1982.
No,
like,
same queen.
Same queen. But the other thing that I love about like Roald Dahl particularly, but a lot of like British literature, they get to there's just this shorthand. They just get to refer to the queen, and there's no explanation that's needed.
No.
Like, at no point do they need to say like Queen Elizabeth II
of England.
Like, they never have to say that at all because there's a shorthand. We know who they're talking about. Whereas like in American literature, if you refer to the president, like there is a 50-50 chance they're talking about a specific president or like a fictional president. And if they're talking about what, like, you don't always know who they're talking about.
Right.
But in like English literature, the queen is the queen.
The queen is the queen. She's been the queen for a number of years.
Yeah.
A large number of years.
That's one of the things I liked about it. But the other thing that I really like about it too is, no, I think that was the second thing.
I think that was the second thing.
So those are the two things. Like, I like that it's still the current queen, and also just we get this nice British shorthand for the queen.
The queen. Yes. I just want to jump in for a second here. Because we just like lost track of our speaking. And that's going to happen a lot. And we're going to try to edit it out. But there might be times when we can't. And it's because we're very tired and we have a newborn. So I just you know, give us some leeway on saying things correctly or at all. I would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This has been my TED Talk.
Jesus. Oh, this is a goddamn mess. No, can I tell you the thing that came rushing back to me?
Yeah.
So we talked about this in a previous episode when we did the Chronicles of Narnia. Like, if I had to make a list of the top 5 like foods from books that sound delicious, like Turkish Delight is number 1 for like the food I always wanted to have because it sounded so delicious in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Come to find out that it's fucking gross.
It's disgusting.
It's just
flavored
gel
with
flavored with rose water.
Yeah.
Like, gross. But like in this one, this book has 2 because this has the Frobscottle. I want to know what Frobscottle tastes like.
Yeah.
And
also it makes you fart, which you really enjoyed.
So farting is really central to the plot of this book, and it also comes up in these movies. This might be one of my favorite episodes we've ever done because I really we watched a fucking Spielberg movie that has an entire scene about farting.
So many farts.
It made me so happy. Just delighted me inside to share this experience with my new son.
Again, like as new parents, like really probably 90% of our conversation is focused around farts and poops.
He farts so much.
So loudly and so much. And often when he's sitting in your lap and just very relaxed and it's very sweet, you just hear
It's a lot. It's a lot.
And you feel something drop. And
that's different. No, that's different.
No,
don't get scatological with this.
He's a fart boy, is what we're saying.
Super fart boy. Or as I guess Dahl liked to call them, was it whizzpoppers?
Whizzpoppers.
Yep. So Frobscottle and whizzpoppers. But then on the other end of the spectrum, probably the least appetizing food that I've ever read about in any book ever are the snozcumbers.
Yeah.
I want to see one.
Well, one of the movies that we watched, the live action one, as soon as the snozcumbers came up on screen, I literally grasped your arm and I was like, that's a snozcumber. It was so perfect. Apparently I had real emotional connection to what a snozcumber needed to look like, and that was it.
It's just so beautifully described in the book.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I love it. I think this book is fucking great.
Yeah.
I just want to come out there and say it. I think it's wonderful. It's like any Dahl, it's just so fucking weird. But, and this has come up on the show so many times, I love how gruesome it is.
Yeah.
I love how it doesn't hold back. People die in this book constantly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He doesn't hold back on things that are horrifying. I mean, for a child, imagine being snatched out of your bed at night by a giant. That's a real visceral fear that probably you might actually have. And for one of the children in the book, Sophie, it turns out great, right? But it does happen to other children in the book that they get snatched out of their windows at night by a giant and they do get eaten. It does happen. They don't save all of the children in the world forever. A whole bunch of children get eaten in this book is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I want to talk about the plot really quickly, though, because we've basically gone through the whole thing. And I guess, spoiler alerts, let's talk about how it ends.
Yes.
So Sophie's big plan. Do you mind if I go through her big plan?
Mm-mm.
So basically her big plan is, okay, here's what we're going to do. You, BFG, you make dreams. That's his whole job, is that he captures dreams and then he blows those dreams into the bedrooms of little children and gives them dreams.
Got that?
That's his whole thing. He doesn't get paid for this. There's no benefits.
So it's not really his job, more of his hobby.
Right.
Much like this podcast.
Mm-hmm. So, this is exactly what you were talking about. I have no idea what I was talking about.
You've lost your mind.
I have lost
your mind.
My mind.
Your tiny mind.
Okay, so her plan is that he's going to make a dream that describes everything that has happened. Giant Country and the bad giants and the BFG and Sophie and all that kind of stuff.
And the children getting eaten.
And
the butcher boy.
And oh my God. So she's... When I said everything, I meant everything. You don't have to list. Is the butcher boy part of everything?
Yes.
Then you don't need to say him because he's part of everything.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
He's my fave.
So we're gonna make this dream for the queen, and we're gonna put it in the queen's head, and then she's gonna wake up and she's gonna help us because she's the queen, and that's just what she does.
That's what the queen does.
And that's what they do.
Yes.
And they make this dream, and she meets the queen, and they get the army, and they all go to Giant Country, and while the giants are all asleep, they tie them all up, they fly them with helicopters back to England, they dig a giant pit, and they drop the giants in the pit, and that's basically how the book ends.
Yes.
With the BFG and Sophie, they give the BFG a big castle near Buckingham,
yes.
and they give Sophie a little house next to it, and they just live out their years, and the BFG gets to do all of his stuff, but from England instead of Giant Country.
And the big giants have to eat snozcumbers forevermore.
Right. because they're awful.
They're not allowed to eat children anymore.
I love to near the end when Roald Dahl says like, well, I should probably put something in about the rules they had about the fence around the big giant pit. So I'll write about how 3 guys just like fall into the pit and get eaten. And so they had to put up a sign that says, please don't climb on the fence.
There it is.
Like even after they win, even after they capture them, he still can't stop himself from doing something gruesome that ends with people dying.
Yeah.
I love this book.
Fair enough.
So much. It's so good. And it's a beautiful, happy ending, and everything's wonderful, and everything's great.
Yes.
I love this book. We did it.
Yay!
We did the book.
We did the book.
Yay.
Yay.
So before we move into the movie, there's a couple little things that I want to talk about that I found out.
All right.
And so there are actually some other adaptations of the BFG that we're not going to talk about.
Oh, no.
That I didn't know about.
Oh, no.
Did you know that in the UK, it was a comic strip from 1986 to 1998?
No.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
I've never seen that ever.
I found some of them online. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
Apparently, all the scripts for it like had to be run past Dahl.
Okay.
And like I guess the strip started out as being an adaptation of the story, but then it just kind of went and did its own thing, like a comic strip do.
All right.
It also was a stage play in 1991.
Oh, cool. How did they do the Giants?
I have no clue. Do you
Cool.
want to? Here's the extent to which I found out. It was a stage play in 1991. I have no idea how it worked.
Maybe it was like a puppet thing.
Maybe?
Maybe.
What would you say you would do with the BFG? Do you think you would have like all the giants are regular sized people and Sophie's like a puppet? Or do you think like Sophie would be a real person and there would be like giant hands and giant ears and stuff?
I feel like I would do it more in like sort of a Julie Taymor Lion King type of thing.
Kind of a Spider-Man turn off the dark kind of thing?
Well, no. I mean, I don't think they did like big animal parts like on sticks. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Like to make the animals seem bigger.
No, I just wanted to talk about Spider-Man turn off the dark.
Okay. All right. That's the one thing you know Julie Taymor from, I guess.
Well, no, I know her from The Lion King.
There it is.
I'm aware of that as well.
Uh-huh.
But the big adaptations we're going to talk about now are the 2 movies.
Yes.
So in 1989, there was an animated TV movie, and then in 2016, there was a live-action movie.
Yes.
Quote-unquote live-action.
Yes.
So let's get started with this animated version.
Yeah.
Because we watched both of them.
Yeah. And this animated version, do you remember watching this as a kid?
Yes.
Because I think I do too. There were definitely some moments where I was like, yes, I remember this. It was kind of like watching the animated version of Charlotte's Web.
Yeah.
That I just had these like intense sense memories for certain scenes, but it wasn't like something I remembered sitting down and watching from beginning to end, but there was definitely stuff in there that I totally recognized.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have the experience of watching something that came out when they were kids and going through almost the entire thing going like, I never saw this. I never watched this. And then one thing happens and you immediately switch and you go, oh, like, fuck, I watched this 20 times when I was a kid. That happened to me, again, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Like the animated one. Like, we went through the entire thing and I was like, I'd never seen this before. And then the image of, like, the White Witch and her lackey turning into, like, a tree and a stump was like, oh, my God, I watched this so many times.
And I had the exact same thing at the exact same moment with that Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then we watched the, like, 1980s miniseries and I had the same. Well, I knew I had seen that a million times, but like there were some moments in that I remembered super strongly.
Yeah, BFG was kind of like that. So like there's like a little mouse character that lives in Giantland.
Yeah.
He like lives in the BFG's like cave, and he's like this beautifully animated little weird mouse creature thing. And for whatever reason, that got me the most. Like that hooked into my memory the most.
That was what did it for you.
But I've definitely seen this movie. I definitely watched it when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about this movie, I will say, like, as just sort of an overarching comment, is there is very little dialogue and a lot of music. Like, it is extremely atmospheric, and it was the first thing that we watched for the podcast after bringing the baby home, and it was super nice because we didn't have to pay. It wasn't that we didn't have to pay attention, it was that we could talk to each other while we were watching it. Like, a lot of things we have to pay super close attention and like take a lot of notes and pause it a lot, and this we like didn't ever really have to pause because if we had to speak to each other, it generally wasn't over dialogue. So I recommend this movie as a first thing to watch if you like have a baby at home. Like, it actually was perfect.
Yeah, it was good in that way.
It was good in that
Definitely
way.
good in that way.
Yeah.
So here's a couple things about this movie. So it was produced by Cosgrove Hall Films. Cosgrove Hall was made up of Brian Cosgrove, who directed it, and Mark Hall. They produced it together. They worked in the UK for years in animation. Like 3 of the things that people would probably know about, there was a Wind in the Willows animated movie and then TV series that they did.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that for sure.
And then they also did Danger Mouse and Count Duckula.
Gotcha.
Which, if you're listening to this from the UK, you definitely know these. And if you're listening to this in the US and grew up in the 80s, you definitely know Danger Mouse and Count Duckula because they were on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
I guess if you grew up in the 80s and had cable.
Yeah. And in one of the scenes in this, one of the little boys has a Danger Mouse poster on his wall.
Yeah, it's real cute.
It's cute.
I fucking loved Danger Mouse and Count Duckula when I was a kid, by the way.
They're great.
It made me so happy to see that and find out about the connections there. Screenplay was by John Hambly. This is actually something they had started working on like in 1984. They were doing tests and they were doing like storyboards and showing them to Dahl. They got his approval. Like, spoiler alert, Dahl did not like most of the things that were made of his work. Like, famously he hated Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He hated the movie.
Yeah.
He apparently loved this.
Oh.
This was like, I think, his favorite adaptation of his work that he had seen.
I bet it was because it had a song about farts in it.
The song about farts is fucking great. Is great. There's not even
one song in this movie. It's not a musical. There's one song in it, and
that
it's
is incorrect.
about farts.
That is incorrect.
There's two songs.
There's multiple songs. There's like a song over the credits. There's the song in Dreamland, and this is the song about farts.
Okay. The song over the credits does not count.
It's so weird. Well, that's the whole thing. I remember like finding out when I was younger and I was finding out about like more about musicals and more about the craft of musicals. And I remember someone saying like, well, I think it was Mel Brooks was talking about Making the Producers. He was like, I don't know when they sing and when they don't sing. And someone had to explain to him like, well, in a musical, you sing when the emotion takes you to song.
Right.
Like when the emotion gets so big that words won't work, you have to sing it. That's how musicals work. So I love the idea of putting that on this, that like everything that happens in the movie, the emotion is never big enough to necessitate a song.
Except the farts.
Except for farts.
He loves those farts.
It's
Loves them.
so funny.
Loves them.
So Cosgrove Hall had been working on this for a number of years. It was a really small team. Let's talk about it from a craft point of view. I think it shows. Like, what did you think about the animation in this movie?
I mean, it was very like pen and ink drawing style.
Yeah.
I thought
it's not Disney.
It's no Disney. I mean, it's not the kind of thing where like the mouth matches the dialogue particularly well as the mouth is moving,
like ever
or at all. But it's fine. I mean, it looks very much like the Quentin Blake illustrations from the book. Like, it's very similar to that, I thought.
I mean, in that it's very kind of like rough.
Yeah, rough. That's what I mean by like pen and ink drawings.
Yeah, I think it has that going for it. I remember someone saying that like the secret to Disney, like trying to define why Disney animation was better than other animation, it wasn't about like character design, it wasn't about the lines, it was about consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could watch a Disney movie and the animation would be consistent from beginning to end.
Right.
Whereas in most animated movies, like most non-Disney animated movies, there's consistency problems.
Yeah.
And this definitely has that.
Yeah.
Like, there are some scenes where the animation is janky as hell.
Yeah.
But then there's other animation where the characters are so beautifully realized and so expressive. Like, I mentioned the little mouse before.
Yeah.
I feel like they spent more time animating the mouse than anything else in the movie.
Well,
like, it was so much more fluid and so much more expressive than anything else. It was so inconsistent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like the way that the characters are drawn is really inconsistent. Like, towards the end, as you see like the queen standing next to Sophie, like Sophie looks like a cartoon little girl and the queen looks like a semi-realistic drawing of the queen.
Well, especially because the queen has her maid right next to her, and the maid is like a full-on cartoon character,
right?
Like, oh, and shrieking and fainting, like just a full-on cartoon character. And the queen looks like she stepped off of like a pound note.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
I recognize the maid's voice. She's Mrs. Slocum from Are You Being Served? I was really proud of that poll.
It was really good.
It's an actress named Molly Sugden.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I mean, as far as voices go, so the BFG is voiced by David Jason, who just did a ton of voices, and he was in some live action stuff.
He did a good job.
Amanda Root was Sophie. She's making her second appearance on this show?
Yeah, she was in Jane Eyre. I mean, she's a well-known British actress.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
I thought, like, can we talk about the characters for a second? So what did you think of Sophie in this movie, other than the fact that she looked exactly like you as a child?
I mean, yeah.
Like exactly like you as a child.
A little bit.
Like exactly like you as a child.
She did in the 2016 version too. Like, they picked an actress who looked a lot like me as a child. Also, I don't know what to do with that.
But what did you think of Sophie in this?
I thought that she was very meek. I feel like that's the right word for her. She was very quiet. She was very soft spoken. She didn't actually have that many lines. I didn't think Sophie was like really the main character in this version. she didn't go on any kind of a journey, really. Like, she was the same person at the beginning that she was at the end. Whereas the BFG, I feel like, always kind of goes on a journey.
I think, yeah, the BFG was definitely the main character of this.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, I think I have an idea for why she sounded the way she did.
Well, I think it's because she's an adult trying to do a child's voice.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I think there's different ways to do that. And this one, it was just like, well, I'm just going to be quieter and I'm just going to talk like this.
Yeah.
Which was where I thought it worked.
It worked fine.
I really liked Sophie in this version, but she maybe wasn't. It's not like my favorite version of a character from a book on screen.
She just wasn't like a super strong and interesting character. But that was okay because like this movie didn't delve deep into the psychology of any of the characters. Like it was kind of like an overview of the book. Like it was just very atmospheric. It just kind of washes over you. It's very calming to watch, but like the plot is not like super important, I feel like, in this book. And the characterizations of the characters are not like, you're not meant to like strongly identify with them or anything. They're just kind of like, it's very surface. The whole thing is kind of very much on the surface.
And maybe that's one of the reasons Dahl liked it so much, because it was just like, oh, my God, guys.
My book. We animated it.
You didn't fuck with my book.
Yay.
You did my book. Thank you.
And you added a fart song.
Bravo. So that was Sophie.
Yeah.
What'd you think of David Jason as the BFG? Like, if he's the main character of this, what'd you think of him?
I mean, again, like he talks. So the whole thing about the BFG is that he talks funny and makes up his own words, because it's kind of like an extreme example of someone who like has seen a lot of words written down, but has never heard anyone actually pronounce them. So has sort of just made up his own pronunciations and has never had anybody to correct them. And he's taught himself to speak English, which is great. And he's made up all these words. And then it's really cute when Sophie corrects him, like his feelings are hurt. He's like, oh, well, no one ever taught me any different. I'm sorry. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It's really cute. We actually, this is skipping ahead a little bit, but we heard a little clip of an interview of Mark Rylance, who plays the BFG in the live action movie. And Mark Rylance also was for many years the artistic director of Shakespeare's Globe in London, and so he's been in and directed like a million Shakespeare plays, and is a Shakespeare scholar himself. And he was talking about how like that way of making up words and playing with language is very Shakespearean. And I thought that was like a really interesting point that I hadn't really thought about, but it was, true. And Dahl does that too. Like Dahl makes up words. Like the words that the BFG uses sound like Roald Dahl words. Like think about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and like the Scrumdiddlyumptious bar and like, Oompa Loompas and things like that. Like Dahl is a wordsmith himself and plays with language a lot. And I think he was able to do that like more than any other character of his. He was able to do it with this character because this character does the same thing and doesn't like speak English as a first language. So he's made up all of these words.
One of the things I really like about it is that it is Dahl writing a story about being really accepting of people.
Yeah.
Which, like, we don't have to rehash the entire thing here, but like Dahl himself was maybe not the best person to be an example of like accepting people.
Well, do as he says, not as he does.
But like this, it's kind of a beautiful version of that.
Yeah. But anyway, you asked me what I thought of the actor playing this character, and I went into a thing about his wordplay, but I thought the actor captured that really, really well. And he was doing this sort of rustic accent that I thought worked really well for the character also. So yeah, I can see why Dahl would hear that voice and go like, yes, this is what I heard in my head when I was hearing what the BFG like talked and sounded like.
I think there's a really big question to answer, and it really can't be answered because Dahl is no longer with us. But like, what dialect of like Britain is the BFG speaking in? Like what locality is it?
Well, that accent is like Southern England, like Somerset.
Yeah.
Like who's to say whether that was what Dahl was picturing in his head, but that's the accent that he was doing.
Right, but like Mark Rylance isn't doing that accent.
No, he's not.
Like because in my head when I'm reading it, it sounds more like West Country.
Yeah.
Like it really sounds like the West to me.
Well, it's like it's the same accent that Sean Astin does as Sam in Lord of the Rings. It's that kind of act. It's like this very rustic sounding accent.
Yeah. And so like when David Jason started talking, he definitely sounded really good. And this is something that's completely unfair to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like he didn't sound like what I thought the BFG sounded like in the book. He sounded really good and he was doing the words, but like it wasn't what I heard. And then skipping ahead, like when Mark Rylance did it, it was much closer to what I heard.
Okay.
When I read the book.
That's fair.
But I thought David Jason was good.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job. And he had to sing a song about farts.
Can I read you my note about the song about farts?
Please do.
My favorite part of the song about farts is how it's a song about farts. I host a podcast.
Good job.
I have some manner of expertise on this.
I don't know if you're picking it up on the microphone. The baby is making so much noise right now, but it's really cute. He's just like vocalizing.
Oh, we love this kid speaking as a parent.
Yeah. You'll understand someday.
You'll understand someday what it is to record your podcast with your new child here.
Yes.
But I want to talk about vibe for a second.
Okay.
So this movie, as you were talking about before, like it's kind of quiet, it's thoughtful. It's a little different than the book because I feel like the book is very action-packed. Like there's always something happening. There's always a new experience that's happening and it moves very quickly from one thing to the next.
Yeah. And there's like man-eating giants in like many of the scenes.
Exactly. And there's no like transition between them. There's like Sophie sat there and the BFG fed her the soda that made her fart. And then he got thrown around by a whole bunch of giants. Like there's no real transition between those scenes. They just kind of happen.
Yeah.
So when I say action-packed, I literally mean like action-packed. Like there's always something that's happening in it. This movie kind of slows things down a little bit, just a little bit. And I think a huge amount of that is done through just these really quiet transitions between scenes where you have the BFG like walking from one room to another. So it's like, okay, he's going to talk to her about snozcumbers. Now he's going to show her about dreams. And you get to like walk through his cave as he moves from one place to another. And this is one of those places where I think the movie really succeeds because the design of the movie is gorgeous. Like all the watercolor backgrounds and everything. It's a really beautiful movie.
That's what I was going to say. It's like very watercolory.
But there's one thing about the movie that we haven't talked about yet that I think is like number one for this movie is the sound design. I think the sound of this movie is incredible. Like if you only listen to it, it would still work.
Yeah. Yeah, like it could be a radio play.
Oh, 100%. I think it would totally work as a radio play.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like it has this really interesting animation. Like I don't want to call it beautiful. It's just interesting, janky, handmade animation that I think suits the material really well. Like this movie is never slick.
No, totally not.
And I don't think you could really say that about any doll stuff. Like doll stuff is never slick. Doll stuff is always weird.
Yeah.
And I feel like the secret to doing doll is embracing the weirdness.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the music for a second?
Oh, yeah, sure.
This is one of my favorite parts of the sound design for this. The music for this movie, two things about it. One, super, super fucking weird. Two, I think fits great. It's great. Because the music in this movie does two different things. Like sometimes the music is it's very 80s, first of all.
Like synthesizers?
Lots of synthesizers.
Yeah.
Super, super 80s. And like when they go to Dreamland, the music is this very like ding, 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 like very synthesized, very atmospheric kind of thing. But like, do you remember the music when the BFG first steals Sophie and like runs her to Giant Country?
No.
It is high fantasy,
right?
Orchestral, big thumping music. Like it's amazing. Like I love that it sounded like every fantasy movie from the 80s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I thought it was great.
What was the other song besides the fart song?
The song in Dreamland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a song that sings, and it's neither of the characters, but like there's the song when like they're both floating through Dreamland, catching dreams. There's this woman singing, like it could be Annie Lennox or something like that,
okay.
like singing some kind of
that.
generic 80s pop song over the entire affair.
Kind of similar to the Charlotte's Web movie, actually, where there's that weird background song about Charlotte's Web. That none of the characters sing. It's just this like background noise.
Except it's about Charlotte's Web.
Well,
I think when we were doing that, we thought like, well, that's the only good song because it actually says Charlotte's Web in it. Whereas most of the songs like had nothing to do with the story.
Disagree. I like Affair is a veritable smorgasbord.
No, but that has something to do with the story. That's totally fine. I'm talking about, I don't want to relitigate that entire episode. Go listen to our Charlotte's Web episode. We'll talk more about it.
That's fair enough.
I feel like I just am going through this laundry list of things I really like about this movie, which I didn't expect to have so many things I liked about it.
Yeah.
I expected to watch it thinking like, oh, it's going to be just some kind of like janky 80s animated movie. It's probably not going to be very good. And then we got to get past that so we can get to like Steven Spielberg doing the BFG.
Steven Spielberg's Roald Dahl's the BFG.
But the thing that I was delighted by was how much I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird. in the way that fits Dahl as a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, like, it almost doesn't seem fair to compare it to the 2016 movie because it's almost like some one guy's, like, scrappy little fun movie film project against a Steven Spielberg movie. Do you know what I mean? But, like, it was enjoyable to watch for sure.
And I think that was the same thing we found. You know what? Let me compare to another Dahl adaptation.
All right.
Let's talk about Fantastic Mr. Fox for a second.
Okay.
Like, the whole thing that was great about Fantastic Mr. Fox is that you're taking something that is very, very Dahl, and you're taking another filmmaker who has an aesthetic, who has a way of working, who has a manner of, like, writing dialogue, and who has a way of directing and has a way of editing, and you take his style and lay it completely on top of that story, and you meld those two kind of aesthetics together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And I think it worked so well for Fantastic Mr. Fox. Do you want to transition into the 2016 version?
Sure.
I don't think that worked here because Spielberg doesn't have that kind of really
He doesn't have a visual style. Like, he doesn't have a specific visual style.
like a formal style. Yeah,
no.
He doesn't have that.
Like, you could see, like, say what you will about Wes Anderson, but you could see a still from any Wes Anderson movie and know it's a Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
Like,
you can't say that about Spielberg.
Absolutely, you cannot.
And so you're having someone who doesn't really have his own style. He definitely has choices that he makes. Like, Spielberg likes long takes, for example. So there's definitely a lot of shots in this movie where you stay on the characters for a while and you get to, like, take in whatever you want to. I feel like that's a very Spielberg thing to do. Also, it's so digital. It's very, like, Spielberg digital.
Yeah.
Because he's now done The Adventures of Tintin and Ready Player One, which you haven't seen either of them.
No.
I've seen both of them. And he does this thing where, like, now that he's free from a physical camera, now that he has this digital camera that can go as long as he wants,
right,
he does these really long, elaborate, flowing shots from location to location.
Yeah, well, you pointed this out to me, and it was one of those things that once you pointed it out, I couldn't stop seeing it, which was that, as you say, like, he's free from the burden of having to physically set up a shot and then set up another shot, and so he can do these shots that just move kind of seamlessly through time or space or both. But the problem is getting a little bit self-indulgent about that, and
a little bit,
like, or a lot, and making those shots or those scenes go on too long just because you can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like this film really suffered from that.
But let's back up for a second.
Sorry.
So no, you have no reason to apologize. I'm the one that, like, shoved us into it. But let's talk a little bit about this movie itself.
Yes.
Kind of the road to getting this movie.
Please do.
So, like, some background that's really important is obviously Dahl was super, super, like, selective about letting people make movies of his shit.
I thought you were going to say he was super, super dead.
Well, no, and he was also super, super dead. So a lot of this stuff was left up to his estate. And they knew he was selective, so it was really hard to get, like, a Roald Dahl movie made.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't happen very much.
Yeah.
So this was something that, do you know Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy?
Yes.
They've been making many, many movies. People may know Kathleen Kennedy from being the head of Lucasfilm, and she is the one in charge of every new Star Wars movie that's been coming out for the last few years.
For better or for worse.
And all the Indiana Jones movies and stuff like that, also for better or for worse. So they wanted to make this movie for a really, really long time. They'd been working on it since, like, the 90s. Like, literally 1991 was when they started developing it at Paramount.
Ironically, also the year he died, I think.
Well, yeah, it might have something to do with it. And then it was, so they were working on it for years. They knew they wanted to do a live action version of it. One thing that I found that was really fascinating to me was that in 1998, they had gotten to the point where they had a draft of the script with some really good writers. One of the writers on it was Robin Swycord.
Okay.
Who did the 1994 Little Women.
Yep.
Which, like, I think I would probably hold that up as one of the maybe 5 best adapted screenplays of anything we've watched for anything for the show.
We follow her on Twitter.
She's great. And Robin Williams was going to play the BFG.
Okay, I can totally see that.
They did a table read.
Oh, no.
It didn't work.
I see.
And it didn't work apparently because Robin Williams has such a improvisational style. But him trying to improvise in the vernacular of the Big Friendly Giant just apparently did not work.
I can see that not working.
Right?
Yeah, I believe that.
So that didn't happen. It didn't mesh. It stayed in development hell, and eventually, like, Paramount lost the rights to it, and it reverted back to the Dahl estate. Then in 2011, DreamWorks acquired it. So it was still, like, that's such a funny thing about this. Like, it's still Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy. They never stopped trying to produce it, but like whichever studio had the rights to it changed multiple times.
Got it.
But it was always the two of them that were attached to it. So they got it in 2011, and it was announced that Melissa Matheson would write it. Melissa Matheson, she is famous for a number of different movies. I'll start with The Black Stallion from the late 70s. She wrote Kundun for Martin Scorsese about the Dalai Lama. And she also wrote a little movie called E.T. the Extraterrestrial for Steven Spielberg.
I've never seen E.T.
You haven't?
No.
I hated it when I was a kid.
Oh no! Was it? Well, I think I know why. Why? I think you found E.T. scary because you don't like anything that has big eyes and like long pointy fingers.
E.T. the Extraterrestrial is a horror movie.
Yeah.
It is deeply terrifying. It is not heartwarming at all. It is a horrible, horrible, horrific, really, really well crafted and beautifully done horror movie.
But are you saying that because you find E.T. himself scary?
Oh no, it's a beautiful movie and I find it scary.
Yeah.
Like that's all it really comes down to. Like E.T.'s amazing.
Yeah.
I just like can't stand it because like
you don't like anything that looks like a gray.
Ugh, I hate it so much. Like the scene in the field, you don't even know it, but the scene in the field when Elliot drops his flashlight and like illuminates E.T.'s face is like the scariest thing I've ever seen in anything.
Oh, no.
Or like when E.T. throws the baseball back from the shed. Holy shit. Like holy shit.
So now we're
terrifying.
talking about a movie that I haven't seen.
But if you're gonna do an adaptation of this at like get someone who wrote E.T. to do a movie like about a giant abducting a little girl from her bedroom to bring her back to a country where other giants do it but then eat the children.
Yeah.
Like I think the writer of E.T. is probably a good choice for that.
Yeah.
So Melissa Matheson wrote this script and then it took a few years, but in 2014 Steven Spielberg was announced to direct it. It's just so much amazing bullshit Hollywood business stuff that goes along with this that I can't believe I'm even talking about, but I find it like a little interesting. So the movie was acquired by DreamWorks. Then when Spielberg was attached, it was going to be released through... So because of a release deal, it was going to be produced by DreamWorks, but released by Touchstone Pictures, which was a subsidiary of Disney. And then during the pre-production, everything shifted, and Disney said, no, we're not going to do Touchstone because we don't do that anymore. We're going to release it under Walt Disney Studios. So that means it's the first movie that Spielberg ever directed, like with the Disney logo in front of it. I find it fascinating, even though it's kind of bullshit.
Can I ask you a genuine question?
Don't know. If your question is going to be, why does this matter? Go away. What does this have to do with the shark? It has nothing to do with the shark.
It really wasn't, why does this matter? It was, do you think the sentence you just said was genuinely interesting podcast content?
Well, yeah, I do find it interesting.
All right, fair enough.
Like, oh my God, I do. Shut up.
Don't tell me shut up in front of our child.
I think it's interesting in just an example of how bullshit Hollywood can be. Yeah. Because the point of this is nothing about the story, nothing about the production. It's all about like what goes in front of it. So like it's a Disney movie, but how much does that really matter? Here's another company that co-produced it, Walden fucking Media.
Oh God, we hate Walden Media.
What, like, I'm glad they've pivoted to just doing like adaptations of children's books and not like message adaptations of Christian children's books. Like, I'm glad they've pivoted. So it's nice to see that Walden Media is producing a Steven Spielberg movie.
I guess.
From the director of Schindler's List.
Oh my God.
And the producers of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. And The Giver.
Right, and The Giver. Blah. Anyway, so that's how it eventually became made. So it was 2016 when this was first released. Here we go. So we have this movie. Well, how about this? Let's go through like watching the movie.
Okay.
Because at this point we had read the book, we'd watched the animated one. We'd both seen it when we were kids, but didn't really remember it that well, and neither of us had ever seen this live action one.
So we're pretty evenly matched on this.
Yeah, like I saw the trailers for it, and I just remember thinking like, wow, just Spielberg doing Dahl. I'd see that at some point. Mark Rylance is a fucking weird beard, and he's
a really strange person.
Really, like, but in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, like he's like currently what's the best way I could put this? Like he is Spielberg's muse at this point.
You think so?
Well, because he was in like Bridge of Spies, and Spielberg asked him if he wanted to do this while they were working on Bridge of Spies together.
Okay.
And I feel like he's now, and then he was in War Horse, like he's showing up in everything Spielberg is doing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Like he's like his new muse at this point. He's Spielberg's new Tom Hanks, if you will. Hey, it's Jeremy here. I meant Ready Player One. He's totally not in War Horse. Okay, back to the show. So we're watching this movie, and from minute one, we were just like, oh, Walden Media. Cool.
Oh, no.
So this one starts in kind of a different way than the other ones, because Sophie's still in an orphanage.
Right.
But we actually get to see her in the orphanage a little bit. Like there's some business that she gets to do at the very beginning.
She has like a little routine that she does like in the middle of the night. with her blanket and getting the mail and all this stuff because she can't sleep.
Yeah.
That's her whole thing.
We get to see her like yelling at drunk guys out of the window who are coming out of one of the pubs like late at night.
This actress, by the way, could not be more adorable.
Oh, she's great.
She's just great.
This was was her name Ruby Barnhill.
Yes.
Ruby Barnhill. I just remembered off the top of my head.
Good.
But yeah, she gets some business. She gets to do some stuff. She gets to introduce the audience to the story. Because like you said, for the animated one, like Sophie's not really the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Like the BFG is kind of the main character.
Yeah.
In this one, would you say that's the same?
No, I think she is the main character, but like I actually think there were a couple of things that like they were trying to do with her or set up with her that they didn't follow through on that I was kind of disappointed by. I mean, I guess maybe I don't think the female character is underwritten. Like Sophie is clearly the main character of both book and movie, and one of the nice things about it is like she just like, especially considering it's Roald Dahl, who has some weird gender essentialism in some of his books,
including this one,
but like there's nothing about her being a girl that is important. Like, does that make sense? Like I feel like that's a little bit shitty to say, but like she's just a little girl. Nothing that she does or says or is given to do or say or that the narrator says about her is specific to her being a girl. She just is a girl having this adventure.
Yeah.
Which I really like. And I think it's one of the reasons, like, again, this is kind of shitty, but like, you know, there's this whole thing that like boys will only read books about boys, but girls are expected to read books about girls and boys.
Mm-hmm.
But like something that Dahl does is his characters are very agender. So like a boy, I'm trying to say this in like a stereotypical way because obviously like we have a little boy and he will read all kinds of books about boys and girls. Like my goal is for him never to know that like Little Women is a girl's book, for example. Do you know what I mean? I just want that to be his favorite book. But like I can see a little boy reading this book and not caring that the main character is a girl because there's nothing about her being a girl in the book, which I think is great. Like I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think the movie sets up some stuff for Sophie that we're like to learn about her, to know about her. Like you just mentioned, like the scene where she yells at the drunks out the window to like go home and shut up because there's children trying to sleep. Those drunks are played by the same people that play the giants. So I thought, oh, there's going to be an equivalent scene where she shouts at the giants and tells them to shut up. Like they're setting something up here, and they never did. Like maybe there was a scene that was cut, and then they forgot to go back and cut like the corresponding scene that makes that scene make sense. But it just didn't go anywhere. Did you notice that?
I don't agree that it didn't go anywhere. I think that like the scene you're describing you're right, it doesn't happen. I think maybe what they were trying to do was something a little more kind of abstract, where this is a person who is willing to stand in her power and stand up to people that she thinks are doing the wrong thing. Like she is not in a position to yell at the giants, but she is in a position to say to the BFG, you need to stand up to them. We need to fix this. Here's the plan for how we're going to do it.
That makes sense. I just didn't understand if it wasn't going to be a direct correlation why they had those same actors play those drunk characters.
Well,
like I thought they were trying to draw a parallel that they never ended up actually drawing.
I think they were trying to do like the Wizard of Oz thing. I think they were just trying to do like that. And you were there, and you were there. Like,
guess.
How fun would it be if those actors show up in roles? Well, okay, let's have these guys play some real roles in this. Well, who could they play? Because there's no other real characters. And here's what we'll do. We'll put a scene at the beginning where they get to be drunk guys coming out of a pub.
Sure.
Like, I actually think you could cut the scene and the story wouldn't change. I think this was more of like a behind-the-scenes reason for happening and not a story reason for happening.
Well, it ended up being confusing because it looked like there should be a story reason. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and we're looking at it from a very like literate perspective. Like we're spending all of our time watching movies and reading books and trying to draw like parallels between them and trying to see thematic threads through stories. So I feel like we're looking for these kind of things, and if they're not there, it doesn't mean that it's a problem. It's just that like that's what we brought to it.
All right, that's fair enough.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. But we do get some bit of business, and then she gets stolen by the BFG. I personally fucking loved the scene where she gets taken by the BFG.
Oh, you were like terrified.
Like this was like, I was terrified because I was like being brought back to childhood. Like for a kid's movie, it's scary.
Yeah.
In like a good way. But when she sees the BFG and when he comes towards her, like just that moment where he's standing there off in the distance and then suddenly starts walking towards her is just beautifully executed and really terrifying.
There's a lot of parallels to the movie Hook, by the way.
Oh, so many.
There are some things that Spielberg has, like images that he personally finds terrifying, like a big open window with billowing curtains and a balcony that children get abducted through.
Yes,
is an image that crosses through both of those movies.
Yeah, he's got his toolbox.
Yeah,
he's got his box of tricks. So he steals her. That scene I think is done really well, and then he runs her off to Giant Country. Like the animated one did a really weird thing where like Giant Country is behind the moon. Like he runs off into the air and into space.
Behind the moon.
But that's not really how it's described in the book. Like it's just in a place in the world we haven't discovered yet.
Right.
And this one I think does the same thing. Where like he's running on land and he is suddenly in Giant Country.
Yes.
Because he's running so fast. So fast. And then we get to his house and we get all the classic stuff that we love from the book. We get snozcumbers and we get
I did think the snozcumbers were beautifully rendered.
Well, this is what you were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
They're because this one doesn't do a lot of explanation. Because in the book, he has a whole thing where he explains to her, here's what a snozcumber is, and here's why I hate them, and this is the only food that you can get. In this movie, they don't really do any of that. He just suddenly presents a snozcumber, and I think what they're thinking is they don't need to explain anything because visually it's the most horrifying thing anyone has ever seen. I think they could have done a little explanation of the significance of it.
It was fine.
But it still looked super, super gross. And then we get to, now you just talked about the female character being underwritten. Or not underwritten in our segment. I want to get to Sir not appearing in this film. And it's not that this character doesn't appear, but they make a choice in this movie that is subtle, but I actually don't agree with it, which is which giant is the first giant we meet other than the BFG in the book?
It's not the Butcher Boy.
No. Do you remember?
No.
It's the Blood Bottler.
Okay.
So we meet the Blood Bottler. He comes in to the BFG's house and he says, I think you've got a human being in here. And Sophie has to hide and there's a whole bunch of business and a whole bunch of things happen and he eventually leaves. And then later we meet the Flesh Lump Eater, who is basically the de facto, like, he is the one in charge of all the giants because he is the biggest. And the thing I love about that in the book is that there's this kind of escalating sense of dread that's happening, this escalating sense of danger, where you're seeing what one of the normal giants looks like, and then the BFG goes, oh, and then there's the Flesh Lump Eater. He's even bigger and nastier than that. And so there's this little bit of like, oh shit, what's he going to be like? And then you finally do meet the Flesh Lump Eater, and he's even more horrifying.
Yeah, something I don't think we've mentioned is that the BFG is tiny compared to the rest of these giants.
Yeah, he's like half the size of them.
Yeah, like if that.
So in the animated version, that happens. The Blood Bottler comes to their house first, and then we meet the Flesh Lump Eater, and he is even bigger and even more terrifying and even worse. In this one, though, the Flesh Lump Eater is basically the only giant we ever really see the BFG interact with on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, and it's Jermaine Clements.
Oh, who's great. Like, Jermaine Clement does an amazing job, but my nomination for Sir not appearing in this film is the Blood Bottler.
Oh, no.
Who is played by Bill Hader. Should be great.
It's just not really in it.
And it's not that he's not bad. It's like, yeah, as you say, he's not there.
Yeah.
Like, all the giants are there. I think they tried too much to have the giants have individual personalities, but because you never get a chance to meet any of them individually, it doesn't matter that they have individual personalities.
Right.
It's just kind of there and gone, and I don't see the point to it.
That's
fair.
fair.
I think it's the movie being too complicated.
Yeah, that's fair. The movie does get bogged down in complication quite a bit. They add a storyline that I wasn't sure was necessary at all, which was that like there had been another child like previously.
You talk about Hook, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the scene in Hook where Peter finds like their old house and Tinkerbell is there and he's remembering being Peter Pan and all that kind of stuff. That's like done one for one in this movie.
Yeah, like she finds the boy's room and she finds his jacket and she's wearing his jacket throughout the whole movie, but she turns it inside out. That I did not understand why she turned it inside out.
Yeah.
I didn't get that at all. And it turns out that like there was a little boy, and there's some indication that like this was 100 years ago because there's like a portrait of Queen Victoria and his clothes are old fashioned, but you see that he's like made drawings of like my friend the BFG, and we come to find out that he was eaten by giants.
Yeah.
They found this boy, and that's the reason why they're so suspicious that he's got another little child because he's keeping as a pet essentially. So that boy was not long for this world. He did not meet a happy end.
Which as a parent is very upsetting, and one day you'll understand.
Yeah. So they added that storyline. This movie was about 20 minutes too long.
I would go further. I'd say it's like 40, like half an hour
It
too
was long. It was extremely
It's
long.
like a 2-hour children's movie.
Yeah.
And I really firmly believe that a children's movie should be like a trim 90 minutes.
Which again is the same with Hook. Like Hook is like 2.5 hours long. I remember going to see Hook in the theater.
Yeah.
The year it came out. So when did it come out? 1990, 91?
Something like that, yeah.
So I would have been like 6, 7, and I remember my mom saying, "This is very long for a children's movie." I specifically remember her talking about how long Hook was.
Yeah.
So again, like similarities abound. But I really like Sophie in this. I thought she was so good. I thought the little actress was so adorable and just embodied the part. She was spunky and she was cute and she was funny and she was smart. I liked all the stuff they did with like her glasses and her blanket. Like she had these sort of signifiers of her human beingness that they had to kind of keep track of throughout the film and like make sure they got back to her, or if they didn't get back to her, there was a reason. I will say, as someone who wears glasses, they don't come on and off your face as nearly as often as that. Like if your glasses are on your face, they just stay on your face.
It's movie physics.
It's movie physics. And I really liked when, like, once she was back with other humans, like once they met the queen and like the queen's servants and everything, she was just like a cute little girl again. Like she was sort of able to relinquish this authority that she had about like making this plan and be like, okay, good, adults are in charge, I'm just going to be a little girl and go with the flow. And I really liked that as well.
That's the thing I love about her plan. Her entire plan is, how can I get adults in charge?
Yes.
Like,
I need adults to help. I need an adult.
Yeah. Because actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure that her plan was to capture the giants and put them in a hole.
No.
Her plan was to let the queen and her army figure out what to do with the giants.
Yes, that's 100% her plan. Can we talk about some of the other actors in this?
Well, we got to talk about Mark Rylance a little bit.
Okay, yeah. What did you think of Mark Rylance's performance?
This was maybe one of the best examples of perfect casting
Ooh,
I've ever seen.
Really? Talk about that.
Well, I keep coming back to like the weirdness of Dahl. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to make choices for like who you're going to have do certain things, and I'm not just talking about actors at this point. Like there's someone I want to talk about after I talk about Mark Rylance that has to do with maybe making the wrong choice when you're matching the wrong person to the material.
Okay.
But I think Mark Rylance is a perfect match for the material for a number of reasons. One, you talk about his appreciation for Dahl's language and how willingly thoughtful he was about weird shit.
Yes.
Like he really, this is a guy who is perfectly willing to say, no, I am going to take this weird shit really seriously because why shouldn't I?
Yeah,
I like weird shit.
It's a drink that makes you fart.
Right?
It's fine.
It's great.
Yeah.
Mark Rylance is perfect for that. He did more of the BFG voice that I heard in my head. He's just, it's such a weird performance. There's so many moments in it that were unexpected, and it's exactly the type of thing I would want to see from someone who's interpreting like the main character of a Roald Dahl book.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there that I feel like could have gotten like really sugary, sweet, sappy, like with the relationship between him and Sophie, and it didn't because he made it weird.
He always made it weird.
Yeah, but like in a good way, I mean.
Can I give an example of someone who I think was absolutely the wrong choice for this material?
Yes.
And that's John Williams.
Oh God.
So
yeah.
this score, like most Spielberg movies, this is a John Williams score. I hated the music for this movie, and I love John Williams. He's amazing. There were two things that I just really, really did not like about this movie. One of those was the music, and one of them was and the other is the pacing. Maybe we can talk about the pacing in a second.
Yeah.
But as far as the music goes, I think it was absolutely the wrong choice for what the music for a movie like this should be, because John Williams is many things, but he's not weird.
Yeah,
he's not idiosyncratic.
He's not subtle either.
No, like his music is big and classical, and the thing he does really well is blend classical music with like classic Hollywood. That's why he's so good.
Right.
That's why his best scores like Star Wars are so good, and it's why his other Spielberg movies are so good. But I feel like what a Dahl movie calls for is not something big and operatic and orchestral and classical. I think what it's calling for is something with a lot more personality to it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, say what you will about the more recent Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Johnny Depp one, which we we did say a lot about it because we did a whole episode on it, which actually we just did as a rerun. So go listen to that. But Danny Elfman was a great choice for Roald Dahl music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite one was Alexander Desplat, who was the composer for Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
I thought the score for Fantastic Mr. Fox was exactly what I would want to hear in a Dahl story. I think he and Danny Elfman are great because Danny Elfman is like operatic but scary and creepy, and there's a lot of that in Dahl's stuff. And Desplat is just weird. He's just weird and uses weird instruments and is okay with a smaller orchestra, and I think that's the kind of thing that's really suited for Dahl. I hated the music in this movie.
That's fair
It
enough.
was just totally wrong for the material.
That's fair.
I know I'm so like I'm really intense about this.
Yeah,
and I feel,
you are very intense.
I feel bad about that, but it, like the thing about the score is that it never goes away. Every single scene in the movie has that there, and it would be like watching a movie where there was one actor who was tragically miscast, but they're in every single scene, so you never get to get away from them.
Yeah, similar to Johnny Depp and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean you get very emotional about. You have very strong feelings about movie music, and so if it's not right, like it really distracts you, I think, from the movie.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. Do you want to talk about the pacing a little bit too?
Yeah,
we talked about how this movie is too long.
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily because they added a ton of things.
No, it's just well, we were talking about this before. Some of the scenes are just too long. Like they're indulgent. They're like self-indulgent on the part of the director.
Yes.
For all of the things that he was so clever. Like, ooh, look what I can do with my fancy digital camera. And it just went on too long.
Yeah, there's like a particular scene I'm thinking of where like in the book, it's not actually that long, but it takes forever in the movie because they add all these like bits of business to like the action scenes. But like the first time that Sophie meets all the giants, she's with the BFG, and they have this thing where they like pick them up and they throw them around, and it's like then they go on their merry way. In the movie, it has to be that, but then there has to be this big action scene where like the giants they skateboard on buses down hills towards each other.
Skateboard on buses is a phrase I'm not sure you thought you'd ever say.
Not really. And like Sophie's in one of them, and the BFG's gonna hit into one. But like in order for this action scene to play out, we need to see every single thing that the giants are doing, every step that they're taking. We have to see them pick up the bus, and we have to see them walk to the top of the hill and then stand on the bus and steady themselves and then ride down. And it takes forever. And it's in the middle of an action scene. I don't really want to see any of the characters like, getting ready and setting up. It's like the action scene equivalent. Do you remember when we did the producers and we got this whole thing about how when they made the producers movie, like the new one, there was just
they forgot it wasn't a play.
Exactly. And so in a play, you need to see entrances and exits, but in a movie, you can just cut to someone being in a room or not being in a room. And in this is kind of the action scene equivalent of that. Like if characters are going to do a thing, and in order to do a thing, they need to pick up like in order to do thing A, they need to pick up like object B and walk to location C. We don't need to see them pick up the thing and walk to the place. We can just see them doing the thing, and the audience can kind of figure out what's going on. And the movie's full of stuff like that.
Basically, what you're saying is that Spielberg was so concerned with whether he could, he did not stop to think about whether he should.
Yeah, I think that's a really intelligent observation. I think that's really good. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
That's really smart.
Thanks.
I think that's insightful. Is that like from something? Anyway, so
cool.
But there's like another scene later in the movie where, because you were talking about like how all of these things are happening in the frame all at once. There's the scene when all the giants break into his like dream locker, his like dream room.
His house.
Well, no, because there's his house, but then you go further into it,
right?
And they go to where all the dreams are kept,
right?
And the whole idea is multiple things are happening. They're trying to look for whatever human being he's hiding, and he is actively hiding Sophie, and she's like going all around the room, escaping them, and there are these giant shots that play out within it that are just in one take, where we're following her, and then suddenly we're focusing on the BFG, and then the bigger giants. We're flying all around the room, and I get what they're going for. What they're going for is the idea that, okay, we'll show the audience everything, and then we will use camera position and timing to draw people's attention to things, but we'll let the audience decide what their attention is drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, like I got nauseous during those scenes. And this wasn't even on like a big screen in 3D. Like this was on our TV at home. I couldn't tell what was going on because I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, exactly. There's like nothing really to focus on. There's
Yeah.
a lot going on, but like you're not really sure where you're supposed to look.
And I guess if he didn't have the technology behind him, he would never have shot it that way. Like if this was just actors in a room, I think it would have been shot more traditionally, which, okay, maybe it's less interesting, but it's definitely more engaging.
Yeah. I mean, think about Hitchcock. Like, all he ever had was actors in a room, and he's like one of the most famous directors of all time.
Yeah.
You know?
Even Spielberg is great with just actors in rooms.
Yeah, I mean, he did Jaws. Like, that's just guys on a boat.
Yeah. I can't remember if I mentioned this before because, again, my brain is oatmeal. But, like, Spielberg has these movies that come out now, like Ready Player One and Adventures of Tintin. I think I mentioned those.
I think you did.
Where, like, he is obsessed with kind of pushing these shots as long as they can go and cramming as much into the image as he possibly can because he can.
Yeah.
And I just don't respond to it. I think this is someone who, when he just has actors in a room with cameras, he can do amazing things. I wish he would bring that to this. But he doesn't.
Yeah.
The movie's way too long.
Well, you're right. It is too long. So let's talk about the end.
Right, which takes forever to get there.
Which takes forever to get there.
Much like this show.
So the BFG and Sophie go to find the queen. And it's a very similar scene to the book where Sophie sits on the windowsill and the BFG blows the dream into the queen's ear or whatever. And she has a very bad nightmare about children being taken from boarding schools and eaten. And then her maid comes in the morning and she says, oh dear, I had a terrible nightmare. And the maid says, oh my gosh, because your nightmare is on the front page. Look, here is the newspaper. And then they turn and they see Sophie. I have a couple things to say about this scene. One, so I only saw the first season of Downton Abbey, but I think the woman who plays the queen is somebody's mother in the first season of Downton Abbey.
She's cousin Matthew's mother. She's Penelope Wilton.
Yeah. And she was very good, I thought, at playing the queen without doing like a queen impression, if that makes sense. Like she was regal and looked kind of like the queen, but wasn't like doing her voice or anything like that. Do you agree?
I would agree with that. Like,
Yes.
she's just kind of there. That's like my biggest problem with her performance in this is she's just kind of there.
Well, that's fine. The queen is a minor character.
Yeah.
Another minor character that I wanted to talk about was the queen's servant, whose name is...
Which servant? Like her maid?
Mary. No, Mary.
Rebecca Hall.
Rebecca Hall. So Rebecca Hall came on screen and I turned to you and I said, oh my God, what do I know her from? And you start looking at IMDb, and just as you found it on IMDb, I remembered she was one of the two wives in Professor Marsden and the Wonder Women, which if you haven't seen that movie, I really recommend it. But the last time I saw her, she had her boobs out, which is why I recognized her.
Which is why it took you so long to recognize her with
Which is why it took me
clothes
so
on.
long to recognize her with like very modest clothes on. That's a fine film. I really, wow, that was a good movie. Anyway, I'm turning red. It's a really good movie.
This is a door you decided to open.
I'm just thinking about that. Just a really good movie. So she was in that. I lost my train of thought.
Well, someone who also is in the scene is Mr. Tibbs,
Yes.
the butler, and that's Rafe Spall,
Yes.
who we just covered in Dracula.
Yes.
He was in like the 2006 version.
Yeah, and
he's great. I love Rafe Spall.
Yeah,
He's
and
great.
he was like a little bit of comic relief because he kept like calling the army in and then like calling the army off
Oh,
with
and
his little walkie-talkie.
Thank God for the jokes, because this scene again,
It's long.
takes forever.
Yeah, and then the scene where like the BFG has to come into the house and they have to set up all of his stuff so he can have breakfast.
No, like before that, here's a thing they added that just blows my mind. This is something that I've never seen in a Roald Dahl book, and I don't think has any place in a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
The adults are doubting the child because the whole thing is Sophie is there sitting on the windowsill and she says like, I'm here with my friend the BFG, come on out, and he doesn't come out. And there's this, it feels like 5 minutes. It's probably like 30 seconds or a minute where the adults in the room are clearly like, oh, well,
this child does not know.
This child is lying.
Yeah.
Okay, she's just a kid. Nothing magical exists in the world at all. Clearly, that's what's happening. And then finally, she convinces him to be brave and come out. I think this is bullshit, because the thing that I love about Roald Dahl is that weird things just fucking happen. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's great about the scene and the thing that's so funny is that the queen and her like servants are in no way prepared for a giant to just pop out and go, hello.
Hello, I'm the big friendly giant.
Like, that's how these stories work.
Yeah.
I don't want suddenly a moment where they like doubt whether it's real. Because also it's totally disingenuous for the filmmakers to do that, because the audience never buys for a second that the giant isn't gonna come out.
Right.
I guess I don't see what the point of the scene is. Like, Sophie's already fully committed to what they're doing. The BFG's already fully committed to it. The Queen is like pretty convinced. She's as convinced as she can be without the giant actually standing there. We have things to do and bigger giants to catch. I don't understand why time is being spent on this like tiny little turn of character.
Because weird stuff has already happened, that they're already in the mode of believing in weird stuff, because she already had this dream that she woke up and immediately it was true.
Yeah.
Like if something like that happened to you, I feel like you'd be more inclined to believe that weird stuff can happen in this crazy rich tapestry world of ours.
This thing we call life.
Yes.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm like hammering on this one little moment so much is that the movie's kind of full of those things.
Yeah.
They really find so many times when we can like, oh, we'll add a little beat here and we'll add a beat here and we'll add a gag here. And all it does is make the movie too long, and then it's not engaging anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. So they go to Giant Country, and there's like a big fight with the flesh lump eater. And there's like, okay, another scene where like right before they're about to try to trap all these giants, Sophie and the BFG are sitting on a hill. Do you remember what they talk about?
No.
In their little like sunset conversation?
No, they basically have a Gandalf and Pippin scene from like the end of Return of the King, and then it goes right into the end of Kong Skull Island, where they come in with the helicopters. I guess both the beginning and the end of Kong Skull Island, where they come in with the helicopters and just like raise the giants to the ground.
Basically.
Yeah.
But this whole scene that they have, this talking scene, timing wise, it's bullshit, because there are like man-eating giants that are down there that have not been caught yet. I don't understand why they're having like a heart-to-heart.
Yeah. How did they even get there?
And like B, I literally don't remember what they were talking about because it's not important.
Yeah.
Like, what we need is action right now. We don't really need character beats. We've had all the character beats that we need. We know who these characters are. We know what their relationship is. I didn't see the need for it. But anyway, okay, so then they capture the giants, and then they come back to England. And we actually didn't talk about this when we talked about the animated one.
The weird ending of the animated one.
So again, how does the book end for Sophie and the BFG?
The BFG gets a palace or a castle all to himself that he lives in because he's big, and Sophie gets to live in a little house right next door.
Okay. Is there anything about making a cartoon or making a movie that has special effects that would like preclude you from doing that in your movie?
No.
Okay, so how does the animated version end?
The animated version is a terrible ending, which is that the BFG, that Sophie is, and all the little children from the orphanage are going to live with the Queen for reasons. And the BFG is like, all right, well, I got to go back to Giant Country, I guess.
Got to take a ride on the wind,
Yeah.
and you'll never see me again.
And Sophie's like, I am sad that you're leaving. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry that you're sad. Would you like to come with me? And she's like, yes, that is my choice. I am very firm in this decision, and I would like to come with you. And he's like, okay. And everybody just waves goodbye, and they literally ride off into the sunset together. And I'm turning to you going, this is a terrible idea. He has nothing that she can eat. Like, nobody has thought the details of any of this through.
I just don't see the need for them to ride off into the sunset together.
Yeah. Like he can stay here. Why doesn't he stay here? He doesn't have to go back to Giant Country. There's no reason for that.
I don't see why someone would read the book and go, well, this doesn't work.
Yeah, it worked fine.
Yeah, this doesn't. You know what? People won't believe it because they know there's no big giant living next to the Queen.
Yeah.
They know that, so we can't do that in ours.
So to be clear, that was the animated version
Yeah.
we just went back to. So the 2016 version, Sophie again ends up, like, it looks like she's kind of been adopted by the Queen's sexy maid, Rebecca Hall.
And also the Queen's corgis.
And also the Queen's. Oh yeah, the corgis are in this. That I got no beef with the corgis. The corgis are fantastic. So many corgis. They're so cute. And then the BFG just goes back to his country, but like every so often when she gets lonely for him, she can whisper on the wind and he'll hear her because he's got very good hearing.
Yeah, they haven't done anything in the movie to set up the fact that, like, okay, so what you could use for this, if you want this to be your ending, is you could use foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout, you could have them foreshadow the fact that the BFG feels like, I need to live in Giant Country. and you need to live with people.
For reasons.
Like, that could be something that they set up. But he never says anything about needing to live in giant country.
Yeah.
Like, he's afraid they're going to put him in a zoo if they find out about him. But that ship has sailed.
That ship has
like,
super sailed.
People know about him at this
like
point.
the literal queen knows about him.
Right? And he doesn't say anything about her needing to live with people because his whole thing is she's going to stay with him the entire time.
Right.
So they have done nothing to foreshadow this ending. So now we just suddenly have a thing where he has to go. And I'm just sitting there as an audience going like, why is this happening? This doesn't have to happen. He doesn't have to go. I was looking forward to him just living in a big palace next to Buckingham. I thought that would be really cute.
That's a perfectly fine ending. Nobody liked it, apparently. No filmmaker.
It makes no sense to me. Oh, and can we talk about what happens with the giants?
Oh, yeah. They
So in the book, they like dig a giant pit and they put all the giants in it and they put up signs so people don't climb on the fences and everything. And in the cartoon, like, I think they do the same thing. There's like a big pit that they drop all the giants into.
Yeah, and it's like in the zoo or something.
Yeah. But in this movie, you remember what happens to them?
Yeah, they take them to a remote island and give them nothing but snozzcumber seeds to eat. But like,
yes, but
they can swim, I think.
Right?
Or do whatever.
Well,
so they can escape, I think.
They kind of set up that the giants don't like water.
Yeah.
That's something that they do. Again, foreshadowing. That's something they foreshadow throughout the movies, that the giants don't like water. Like, it starts raining and the giants are like, oh my God, I'm going to melt. And they have to like get out of the rain. It's silly.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, I'm not against it. The fact that it's silly is not a reason for me to be against it.
Side note, there's a visual gag that was really, really funny where one of them is using what is clearly a full circus tent as an umbrella.
It's cute.
I thought that was really funny.
Like, there's good stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
But the idea that they're on this island, like, in order for them to get from their island to England, they have to cross water anyway. So how does putting them on an island stop them from going anywhere?
Unclear.
It's completely unclear.
Maybe they're so big that they can just kind of step from their island to England, and this island is so remote that they can't just like step. They would have to swim.
Maybe?
That's my headcanon.
I don't want to have to explain it. I don't want to question it. Why can't they just put them in a hole?
I think we're trying to find logic where none exists.
But why introduce the concept? They're introducing a concept that requires finding logic for it.
But it doesn't require it. We're just thinking too hard about it.
I think they were thinking too hard about it.
I think they were thinking too little about it.
It's frustrating.
Anyway.
I sound like I hate this movie.
Yeah, you really do. It was really delightful.
It's super delightful. It's just the things that I like. I wish that this could have been one of the best Dahl adaptations because it had some things that were amazing in it. Like, Mark Rylance was incredible and Ruby Brandhill was incredible.
I thought she was great.
But there's just, this movie is just not, it's not a good movie. Like, I think it's, well, do you want to do some quadrants?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's finish up here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the animated one. From everything we've talked about, do you get the sense that they cared about the original?
I do think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, from what you've told me about like the way it was made, I definitely think so.
I think so. Do you think it was successful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Roald Dahl thought it was successful.
Mm-hmm.
And, not that he's the grand arbiter of what's made of his work, but like, yeah, I think it was definitely successful.
I agree with that. I mean, we talked about its flaws and stuff like that, but like, it's really good and super fun. New one. Do you think they cared about the original?
No.
No?
I don't think so. Do you think Steven Spielberg had like a real yen to like do some Roald Dahl?
Yeah, a little bit.
You think so?
I think so.
All right.
I do think they cared. If they didn't care, I don't think they would have taken 25 years to make it.
Oh, that's fair. I'm thinking of the director. You're thinking more of like the producers.
Yeah, I bet Steven Spielberg really cared about this. And the reason I think that is because I think it's pretty easy to care about a Dahl book.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, it's the BFG. It's super fun. I bet he read it with his kids.
Probably.
Like, I that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So I bet he cared. Was it successful?
Yeah, I mean, if we're saying the other one was successful, here's the deal. Who's the most important character in the book, The BFG?
Sophie.
Who's the second most important character in the book, The BFG?
The Queen. No, it's the BFG.
Do you think the BFG was beautifully rendered as a character in this movie?
Beautifully rendered, but even he couldn't escape the pacing problems.
All right, that's fair enough. That's fair.
Here's what it sounds like is going to happen right now. Do you think it was successful?
Yes.
I do not think it was successful.
Oh my God, we never disagree.
I think we have to put it on the line.
All right, that's fine.
It was almost successful to me, but the things that held it back way too much.
I guess I just think like I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the animated one. So if we're saying the animated one was successful, then how can we say this one wasn't?
I just think the animated one captured more about the book and had better pacing.
All right.
And that's what matters to me.
To you. Yeah, that's fine. Like, we can disagree. We don't usually disagree.
It's because we had a baby. We're
so tired.
so tired. We're fighting so
We're
much.
so tired, and we sometimes we have hated each other more in the last 4 weeks than in the entire rest of our relationship. Like, true, just pure, short-lived, but just pure hatred
Like,
towards each other.
Bursts of white hot. What the fuck are you doing right now? I need your support right now.
Mostly in the middle of the night. Just a peek behind the curtain.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish.
We're gonna be okay.
If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook,
Our
Twitter.
baby's crying.
If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated.
Our baby just did a whiz popper, so we gotta go.
There's so many whiz poppers.
So many.
Quite the fartist. Bye, everybody.
Bye.